Richard, welcome to the show, man.
So good to be here, brothers. How you been, Justin? You keeping well?
Dude, keeping well, trying to keep warm. As we were discussing, you're in Toronto, I'm in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's freezing right now,
It-
and I'm
It's
ready for warmth.
it's freezing up here. I mean, I gotta tell you, I'm really lucky to have some good friends, partners in operations down south. I mean, we're in Miami. We have an office in LA. We've got one in the Bahamas, and I mean, that's the place we should be doing this show. So shame on us.
Yeah, right. So next time we'll do it in person, wherever you want to go. Any of those other places other than where we live. It'll
You
be
got it.
ideal.
You got it, man.
We'll log it in. But dude, I'm excited about the conversation because you and I were chatting before I hit record, and we're gonna go down a path that I've talked about regularly on this show. It's something that irks me. It's something that bothers me. But before we get to that, let's talk about who you are today. Who's Richard Dolan today? And then we'll break down how you got there.
Justin, I mean, I get asked that all the time, usually at customs. Not so long ago, my 14-year-old son was just a little wee lad, and he would ask me, like, what do you do? Because my teacher wants to know, and I got to bring dad to class to bring a dad to school day. But what do I tell them what you do? So, I mean, it's really easy to be an entrepreneur and an investor, and it'd be very difficult to put a pin in it. I wish I could say I'm a police officer. It'd be such an honor, or a fireman, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a bricklayer, or a social worker. But I've really been truly a leader without title. So my beginning started as really a cold call cowboy in the financial services business. I made 300 cold calls a day every day as a full-time job growing up. And what was amazing was that was a summer job when I was 16 years of age, and I fell in love with that job. It may have been Wall Street, the movie, that inspired me. It may have been that Gordon Gekko said that greed was good. It may have been being around so much wealth at a time in my life that I was so damn broke. I had barely enough money even to make rent because I got kicked out of the house really young. So I was on my own at 16, which is in and itself a cool story. But all that being said, for me, I grew up in the financial services business. I grew up on Bay Street. I was built on Wall Street, and I got trained over a very long period of time where they said, you know what, this kid's got drive, he's hungry, he's motivated. Let's ship him off to a Tony Robbins seminar. Let's ship him off over here to this workshop. Let's weaponize this kid's drive because it's going to pay us back in spades. And quite frankly, I was just hungry. I didn't come from the Lucky Sperm Club. I didn't get no fresh hand up or hand out. I had to make rent. I had to get paid because I had to eat. And so drive and motivation was just maybe their experience, but I was just hungry. And I mean, like literally hungry. So there's something about always starting from zero. There's a hunger you can't quench. So that's where I started off in the financial services business, and really delighted that because of great mentors, great training, but also being in the company of great, smart people and highly accomplished individuals, I was always feeling like I didn't belong there. So I was always earning my way to a better pair of shoes, a better suit. I mean, getting the right pen, owning the right watch, getting the right car. And so there was always a real strong sense of destination and determination. I always had something to aspire for, something to get to, which is not usually common in the world of corporate world. It was about titles, corner office, or perhaps the mahogany wood set office furniture rather than the clip together aluminum set. So graduation in that world versus graduation in the financial services world, it really gave me my early start.
Yeah, and obviously you don't do anything like that now, right? You're not in the financial world. You might be in some way, shape, or form, but not on the forefront, right? Now,
Yeah.
I want to dial back. You had mentioned when you were 16 years old, you got kicked out of your house.
Mm.
What was that like when in that moment you get kicked out and you're like, I don't know what to do? And a lot of people would, like you said, from the unlucky sperm club, right? They would go down this road and they would just hit another brick wall, find an addiction, find jail, find whatever. Obviously you've gone in a different direction. What was that like at 16 getting kicked out? And how were you able to navigate more into your drive versus the easy road?
Well, look, man, I mean, because we're being candid, we're friends, and we were brought together by a mutual friend that we both love very much, Nate May. What's up, Nate? But I can tell you it was both the happiest moment and the most hellish experience at the exact same time. I mean, I came from a broken home. Parents divorced when I was 5. My stepdad said it's either my way or the highway. And at 16, I said, hey, I'll take the highway, punk. So really, there's the Glad kitchen bags. Pack your stuff and get the hell out. And I left out of a matter of pride. So hellish indeed, because I had no idea where I was going. But good because for the first time I can admit this, at that time, I was 16, but 6'2". And I mean, I was built like a brick, poop house. And so I was a big boy, and I attracted, older ladies. So I had a really beautiful model actress at the time, was my girlfriend. 5 years my senior. How about that? 16 with a 21-year-old.
Look at
Someone's legal here. And all of a sudden she's like, well, why don't you stay with me for a couple of days? I've got roommates and we can room you up for a couple of days. Well, 2 months later, I mean, her friends ganged up on me. Said, look, dude, you got to go, because like, we're women, you're a guy, and we like you, but we don't love you. So I had to move out. And so it was a real struggle being on my own for 2 years. It could have been 20, but in that time I gained a massive appreciation for things like electricity and cable, which I thought just came out of a wall. I had to learn how to cook and clean for myself. So I really grew up quite quickly. And I know that was a different time. I mean, I'm in my 40s. So of course, as a father, and I mean, many of our listeners here are parents as well, your kids are growing up in different times, right? Like the worst thing that my son can experience in a day that can maybe cause him critical death is the Wi-Fi gets shut down. I mean, for me, it was not making rent and getting kicked out, which I was. I used to have to find new places to live because I couldn't make rent. So I think for all of that, that's what happened. So I got kicked out at 16. It really forged my path forward, and it was really a matter of survival, which I think, based on the fact that this supercomputer up here, that's perfected only one act over 3 million years, which is just survive, not thrive, not succeed, not love, not connect, not network, not podcast, like how brilliantly you do, Justin, but just get by, just do enough. So when you're really present to what it takes to really survive, like really fight to live another day, you earn it, you appreciate it, but you get it impeccably and without cutting corners. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I love that too, because it's that fight or flight thing, right? I wasn't 16 when I got kicked out, but at 18, I was out on my own, and I wasn't lucky enough to be 6'2" and look older. I'm 5'8", and I look like I was 7 when I was 18. So it was like, good luck, little buddy, right? And you kind of just figure it out, right? And I was lucky enough to find some mentors similar to what you did, and kind of work my way through. Now, obviously, you've gone on, and if anybody Googles you, they'll see you standing next to Bill Clinton and Oprah and Tony Robbins and all of these people. Let's connect the dots there. How do you go from being in the financial world, which, let's be honest, there's lots of people who do it, to then sharing the stages with some of the top individuals, top influencers, top celebrities, top whatever people in the world? What was that like, that trajectory of financial guy to sharing this stage with these individuals?
Well, you know what, Justin, you're the first person to ask such a concise question about such a precise time. So I'm going to give it to you in a very precise way. So good for you for asking it that way. So in the financial services business, no different from any business any of our listeners are listening in on, like whether you sell shoes or timeshare or you're in the MLM business, when you're in the act of selling something, what do you want to be in front of? Lots of people, right? And it was right at that time, right before the advent of the internet, that time when you were always punching in www. Like just try to look for stuff because it was just so cool to be online. But right before that big boom technologically in the world, and getting quite interconnected technologically speaking, there were these big, large format events. And there were events all around the world that would showcase really big, epic thought leaders and icons and leaders and what I've come to call gods in that industry or that sector, that marketplace or that asset class. And so what I found myself one day was at the back of one of these rooms, 10,000 people assembled in a convention hall. And I thought, wow, is that guy up there? That's Dr. Phil. And that's Lance Armstrong. And oh my God, I can't really see, but oh my God, that looks like that's Dr. Oz. And all of a sudden I realized that all the heads in this room were looking that way. And in that moment, just as a basic, ungifted and untalented marketer, my mind thought, well, gosh, if everyone in this room is looking that way, I got to find a way to be in front of this room. Because if I can get seen, noticed, and heard, maybe I'll get the permission to let them know what we're up to. What stock, bond, mutual fund, put, call, or warrant, what industry or sector rotation we're talking about to gather assets, to get clients, to open accounts. So I talked to the organizer and said, hey, listen, I'm sitting in the back row here. This is really rather uncomfortable for me, but what would it take to be on that stage? And he goes, well, are you a speaker? I said, nope. He goes, well, have you written a book? I said, no. He goes, well, have you ever been on stage in front of anybody? I said, absolutely not. And he goes, well, there's no way you'll ever get on a stage like this. I said, but if I were to, and I had to be, is there any room for a guy like me to do even something small, right? Now, right in that moment is good old-fashioned improvisation, yeah? A little bit of a pivot, a little bit of a tell and tale, a little bit of a talk and wiggle. And he says, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we get you to introduce a speaker? You can come out, we'll give you a script, you'll stand at this podium, and you'll just deliver it. It'll likely be only about 30 seconds. So I did that. And of course, to accelerate the story a little bit, you know where this is going. I paid as a sponsor to be up on that stage for a short little period of time. My credibility and profile went up just a little. Not a lot, enough to be noticed, enough to have people come to my booth more than others and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about you because you're on that stage. You must be credible. You must have something to say. But then I did a really cool thing, Justin. I'm only going to say this because I know you want it. And I thought, well, how do I get more people to my booth to fill out the contact card so I can sell them stocks, bonds, mutual funds, puts, calls, and warrants, right? And I thought, well, what are they doing in the audience? The most consistent thing they're doing? Well, they're sitting. So, I mean, butt massages would be out of the question. I can't do that because I can't get to all of them. Number two, though, is they're also doing something quite fascinating. They're taking notes. What if I offered notes for everybody? So rather than taking notes and listening, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show? So I did this impromptu ask of the audience. I said, by the way, for the first 1,000 people that come to my booth and register for notes, I'm going to give you not only my notes, but the notes to every speaker on the stage from the backstage perspective, a vantage point you don't have. Oh my God, Justin, I had 10,000 people pummel my booth, crush the table. Our database grew by leaps and bounds. The organizer was upset because he said that was a marketable moment. You got to pay for that. And that's how I really started there. Understanding and appreciate that omnipresence was what it was about. It wasn't about flyer drops and it wasn't about advertising. It was about being in every single place in front of as many people as possible. And that's where I got the start. That's where I was able to get close to the bigger opportunities that you were citing.
Yeah. Now it's interesting to hear even that part of the story, because what I'm getting to is the evolution of what you do, right? You end up coaching these individuals. You have multiple, NBA championship rings because you work with the Lakers, and we'll get into that too. But what is that pivot? Because a lot of times people go, oh, look, I just cracked the code. I know how to get everybody back to my table. I'll just make more money doing what I'm doing versus moving forward, becoming a coach. I don't know this part of the story. I don't know where this pivot or this shift came from. How did you get to the point where these individuals said, hey, can you help me? Can you help me do what you're doing? Can you help me do the things I'm doing better?
Oh man, Justin, I love how you jam, bro. You're such a cool cat to talk to because you're jamming right. You're pacing it right. So let me continue where we left off and then prompted by your question is that I needed more, right? I mean, at the end of the day, so I got lots of leads and this is fantastic. I'm only up on stage for a couple of minutes. How do I get up there and stay up there longer? I didn't write a book, not yet. And I wasn't truly a speaker, not yet. So I thought, well, how do I really now blow this up? So I began to pay a larger premium to have a little bit more time to then present the biggest speaker. So my crack was 2006, July 17th, 2006. I don't remember good memory. I have zero memory for a lot of dates, but that day, beside perhaps my anniversary or perhaps my son's birthday, maybe my birthday, but that's about it. But that was the day that I got to present William Jefferson Clinton, 42nd president of the United States. And as a Canadian, that was a huge honor because, I mean, we're huge fans of American politics, as you guys can appreciate, because up in Canada, we got none of it right politically, but I digress. So all kidding aside, I mean, it was so cool because I had the shot. It was like an audition. I paid for it. And they said, look, if you screw this up, you will never be on stage with the president again. If he doesn't like you, if you guys don't click, if it doesn't work, you're out. And so I said, great. So I might as well get all I can right now. So I asked for an endorsement from him for the purpose of promoting myself eventually. And Secret Service, White House said, there's no way. He just exited office. He ain't endorsing you. Not quite yet. I said, no problem. But we want to introduce you to him before you do introduce him. So I got to walk up to him and I said, Mr. President, I need you to know, I'm pissing my pants. I'm nervous as hell. and I'm going to guarantee you right now, I'm going to screw this introduction up. So I want you to know that it's been a real pleasure. I love the opportunity. Thank you so much. And he said, and I'm doing it in my best President Clinton fashion. He goes, Mr. Dolan, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And I'm sure you'll screw it up too. And so that was it. I mean, that was it. That was it. So I get up on stage, I do this introduction, and I crush it. I mean, I really felt I viscerally crushed it. And it was a packed house. I think we even broke the fire laws. The fire marshal was there. They were about to shut the event, a crazy event. He comes out and then he says, man, wow. Now, didn't Richard do just a fantastic job? He told me when I first met him that he was nervous, but since he's a motivational speaker and this was the power within, maybe I should be introducing him. It should be the other way around. People are in an uproar. I get this on video. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Their office says thumbs up. We'll see you in the next city. You've got 3 hours to get there. And I'm like, oh my God. And then it began. So 17 shows later, 7 years in the making, I got to work beside him, launching Clinton Global Initiative, doing some other cool things, getting to call him a friend. He's endorsed all my work. And that was the beginning. And once that door opened, it just made a lot of very cool things happen.
Wow. You know what I love? One thing you did, and people ask me this question all the time because a lot of the people I end up interviewing on my show, we become friends. We work together, whether it's a celebrity or, a billionaire or whatever. I mean, I have all these people in my Rolodex, right? And I don't say this to impress anybody. I say this to impress upon people that it doesn't matter who you are. You can always make a connection to whoever it is. And it's by being real. And I love the fact that you walked up and did the opposite of what anybody else would have done in that moment, which they would have been like, Mr. President, it's such an honor to meet you. I'm excited, whatever. But you're like, I'm peeing my pants right now because I'm so nervous, right? Mm-hmm. And it literally made that impression in him. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how you've been able to utilize that type of authenticity with individuals to kind of create the relationships that you've had?
That's a really good question. I mean, when you really think about, and you asked this question, I didn't quite answer it earlier, but maybe we'll tie it in on this one, is that sometimes people have got to experience your humanity, and they can only experience it through your vulnerability, your willingness to really kind of show the cracks in your armor. Now, I got to tell you something, for whether people are watching this or listening to this, I've always known that I've got a lot of gifts, I'm super blessed and grateful for all of them. Maybe people can't speak as well as I could, or articulate as I do, or look the way I do, or grow a beard as sharp as I do. It doesn't matter. But when I was growing up and around that time, I began to really own that power. I began to really own that ego. That ego didn't own me. Now, I wasn't all grown up yet. Don't get me wrong, because I still was a bit of an asshole, I'm sure, at that time. And I really was full of myself, and I still had a lot of growing to do. But what was interesting was I really recognized that the only way to be noticed was to be unpredictable. And unpredictability around celebrity was all about being vulnerable, right? Being able to laugh at yourself a little bit, giving them the opportunity of laughing at yourself. So whether it was me cracking a joke with a Mike Tyson when I first met him and said to him, hey, listen, I don't want you to bite me when I say this, so I'm going to cover my ears immediately following what I'm about to state. But you, my friend, deserve to be institutionalized. Then I joke around and I covered my ears, but then he said something, I didn't hear it. His wife walks over and says, I think he thought you said he should be institutionalized. I said, no. I meant institutionalized as becoming a corporation. Oh my God, is he going to bite me now? But I mean, but Mike's a friend of mine now for 12 years and a dear longtime client. So I think that when it comes to really getting yourself out there, and one of the things we chatted about earlier on, Justin, is you don't have to be the smartest, and you don't have to be the most complex. You don't have to have the science and the strategy and the tactics all figured out. You just got to be real. You just got to remember that we're all in this to win this, and you got to risk it to get it. And it means being willing to just kind of tell on yourself a little bit, and whatever that might be. Was I really urinating in my pants by meeting Clinton? No, but I really could have. I mean, but willing to say that allowed him to be left with the experience. Like, you know what? That guy's not full of himself. That guy I can hang out with because it's not all about him. He's really willing to drop his drawers and reveal who he really is, whomever that might be. So I think that's a really big part of connecting with anybody, whether a celebrity, a politician, a thought leader, an author. And you know that too, Justin. That's what makes it so easy to talk to you. You know, you make it easy to be with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate the kind words, but you know what? I'm loving this conversation because it is that real, right? Like this is literally the trajectory of my life. This is what I've been through. And you had this opportunity to introduce Bill Clinton, which you capitalized on and probably shifted your whole entire life in that moment. Now, when did you realize, okay, I'm shifting my career? And then you became the coach to the coach. When did that happen?
Hey man, I don't know if I'm aging myself, but you'll remember this book, and it was a series where you read through a book. It's like a novel, it's an adventure, and then you arrive to the end of a chapter, and it says, "Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to go left? If so, go to page 38. But if you're
Yeah.
going to go right, go to page 32." And depending on what page you went to, it altered the outcome of the story. And I've often thought about that. I've often thought that, President Clinton, who was the very first major celebrity I got to really appear alongside of, and that resulted in working with Susie Orman, the creator of CSI, President Vicente Fox from Mexico. It opened up all these other doors, and then a big door showed up. And I took that door, and it opened up another plethora of new doors. And so whether it was to Clinton and then to this and to that, they were all in succession. But here's the point, if anyone's making notes at home, is as soon as you walk through a door you never thought would open, immediately look for another door that you think is also locked. So you're always searching, you're always open, you're always knocking, right? And banging on doors.
I love that.
I could have easily walked through that door and said, "Oh my God, I've arrived. I'm not going to knock on another door for the rest of my life because this was a blessing in itself," which it was. But who is to say that the blessing isn't to say that that's the first of many, the first of thousands, the first of millions, or the first of many so that I can empower and show others how to knock on any door they want to. So I felt like, and this is what I want you to write down, is I felt like it was my responsibility to be a living demonstration continually of that courageous act of doing things I didn't even feel like doing, and doing the things I was told would be impossible of doing. So whenever I was told, "Don't do that," I do it. And if I was told, "If you do that, that could become a really big deal," and I would just do that. So I would do everything. So the shift was, remember, bringing this back to the story, remember, increased profile meant increased access to more people. So as my business began to grow and I was doing more deals in the world of wealth management, I had to keep up with the pace of more speaking opportunities and more presentation opportunities. So they went hand in hand. They were in tandem, right? More events, more products. More products, it funded more events. So it was an interesting time. I mean, between 2006 right through till I got my next big break was the NBA. And when I broke into the NBA, I mean, things really changed for me.
So what is it? What is it that keeps you going? What is that driving force behind that next big door, the next, locked door, whatever? Because you go, wow, this is a great opportunity. I've quote unquote made it. Like a lot of people would feel like this is all I've ever said. This is greater than what I could ever imagine. What is your driving force? How can somebody kind of get out of that? What's the word I'm looking for? Get out of that scenario where they feel satisfied.
Justin, man, I'm not just saying this, but bro, this is by far one of the most amazing conversations I've had on a podcast, because you're asking a succession of very insightful questions that pragmatically it unfolds and codifies just how anyone can do what I did. You can take exactly what I did and apply it anywhere. But to answer that question, I think this is going to be something worth everyone at home writing down right now. Even if you're driving, pull over and write this down. If you ain't got a piece of paper or pen, write it on the dashboard or your arm. But here it comes, and you'll like this, Justin, because we chatted about this right before the interview. I think it's about adventure versus agenda. And what I mean by adventure versus agenda is that it just seems to me that everyone's got an agenda, right? Everyone's got an agenda. I'm going to go on Instagram and do this so that I can. I'm going to go on Facebook and run these ads so that I can. I'm going to go on that stage so that I can. I'm going to go in Clubhouse so that I can. They always have an agenda. And rather than just seeing it as an adventure. I mean, so half the time when I was on those stages, I didn't make a damn cent. In fact, I probably spent a lot more money, being out, traveling, having to pay for staff or people with me and support and whatnot. And half the time, we didn't even make any commercial sense out of what we were doing. But gosh, was I having fun. I mean, I felt alive. And when you really understand that you're not trying to chase down success, but you're trying to be at peace with significance. Significance lives in a sense of adventure, not the agenda. And it took me a long time to realize that, because right now we live in an era where people are got metrics and dashboards and they're getting it and they're after it and they're 5xing, 10xing, and they're doing all those things, and there's nothing wrong with it. But it doesn't matter on how often you win the game. It matters if you enjoy even playing it, because you spend more time playing the game than celebrating the game that you won, celebrating that you got a ring. I mean, my most recent ring, it was, I got the box, I opened it up, said, that's fantastic. I closed the box and it's in a vault. That's the end of it. I mean, it ain't about the ring. It was about the journey, the players that got to work with. So it's the journey that counts. It's the person you become. Adventure versus agenda, Justin.
No, I love that answer, and it's so true as far as and something I say all the time. I go, look, you can have a goal to make $1 million, but I promise you, when you get to $1 million, you're gonna go, how do I get to 10? Like, there's goals are good from a direction standpoint, but it's not going to give you satisfaction. It's not going to give you that excitement. It's not going to give you the things that you truly enjoy, which I love that you're talking about. And obviously, as people are listening to you talk and guiding them through this process, they see why you're a coach to such high level people, because it's the realization and the acknowledgement of like, yeah, you're doing huge things, but let's actually enjoy the process. Let's enjoy what we're doing here. So let's talk about coaches a little bit. We touched on this before I hit record. Everybody's a coach now, right? They bought a certificate. They say, I'm a coach. There's people that are life coaches, teaching people how to life from their mom's basement, and so on and so forth. And you're somebody who's teaching people how to do it right. So let's talk a little bit about what do you think a coach should be? And what do you think is happening right now in the coaching world?
Well, in order for us to be on the same page about coaches, you got to just first come to grips with, let's make sure we're on the same page. Coach as a term was first used in the 1700s to describe a mechanism that was fastened to a set of horses that would carry people from point A to point B. So in language, it didn't show up until Germany in the world of education to describe a tutor preparing a student for an outcome, usually preparation for exams. So a coach is simply someone that says, where are you? Where do you want to be? Let me guide you. That's it. So in there conversationally and experientially, coaches have become very different things. They've been speakers and they're mentors and they're trainers, and sometimes they're a hybrid of all those things. Then they focus in different domains of expertise, whether it's money or omnipresence or results or entrepreneurship, life, relationship, intimacy, faith, and such. So the challenge right now is coach is quite synonymous with what consultant once was in the 90s and 80s, where it's this interesting title that allows you to be many things. But there's three things missing from a coach's perspective. Number one is just the sheer fact that you embody the lessons you impart. It's found and discoverable and measurable across your life. That's just number one. Number two is you actually, in fact, have a system. You got to have a system so that you can, in fact, transform a life and not by a miracle or performing some sort of incredible personal alchemy, but because you consistently can produce that result for anybody at any time. But then the third and most important is you've got to focus, like a domain of expertise. So that way you can actually connect the dots for people to say, if you've got this problem, if you're having this challenge, if this is a crisis for you, I got the solution. And to really hold that solution out as the way to reconcile that challenge, because you're the living demonstration for how it's done. Because every day in your life, you're always looking for an opportunity to reconcile something and say, I'm the living demonstration. I'm the poster child for what I preach. I am practicing what I preach and teach and charge. And so, I mean, that's the reality. I think in conclusion to that point, the reason why everyone wants to be a coach is because we want to really connect. We want to contribute. We want to be a part of a conversation. We want to be a part of the community. And that is all good and okay. But there is a recklessness with calling yourself a coach if you can't be a living demonstration for the stuff you teach and impart.
I love that description, by the way. It's probably the most clear anybody's ever gotten on what is a coach and what's happening in the world today, which I absolutely love. So I know that you're guiding individuals through this process of how to truly build their life through coaching. And, like you said, you're the coach to the coaches. How did that happen in your life? How did you, like you said, that big next switch in your life was working with the Lakers, and you've been with them for years now, being able to work with guys like LeBron James and so on and so forth. How did that happen? And how did you become the go-to man for them?
Well, I mean, before I get to answering the question as to how I've been able to reverse engineer how to be an effective coach in these times, before I get to that, you did quite intuitively ask a great question, which is like, how did I get to work with a LeBron James or a Drake or others? But the story about the NBA is interesting because it was in 2010, 11 when I met Juwan Howard. And when I met Juwan Howard, this was so cool because I met him during a trip in Miami. I had just watched Fab Five. For those who don't know, Juwan Howard was the first $100 million contract negotiated by David Falk, which is fantastic in itself. The man who built Michael Jordan and Jumpman Inc. But he was also the guy who was from Fab Five, Michigan U.
Yeah.
And so an amazing story. So I grew up in the era where I loved Fab Five. I mean, short socks, black shoes, hip hop being played during games. So when I saw him at this restaurant, my son was only 2. He was in my arms. And as I was having dinner with my family, I walked over to him. And I said, look, dude, I don't want to interrupt your dinner, but I'm a huge fan. Fab Five, go MU. But good luck in the playoffs, because he had just joined the Miami Heat. And that was the year that LeBron James had just left Cleveland for the Miami Heat to form the big 3, Bosh, Wade, and LeBron. So it was big news. And so he was cool and I was cool. And so, I mean, I left. When I left the restaurant, here it comes, Justin, something stopped me. I don't know if it was divine intervention. I don't know if it was a part of the celestial map. I don't know if it was destiny, a gut, or just a good old-fashioned feeling. But I stopped dead in my tracks as I was about to walk out of this restaurant. I stopped and said, there's got to be more. I couldn't have just met this guy out of the blue. I just saw him in Michigan Blue, Fab Five, ESPN documentary for their anniversary. I got to go back. I go back and I gave him my card. And I said, hey, Juwan, I don't mean to interrupt. I think we met for a reason. This is my business card. If you ever want to have a cup of coffee, I would love to talk about your life after game. Now hold that in your mind for a moment, Justin, because we'll get back to the language and the way in which you shape and create futures for people that they want to talk about, that they want to step into. More on that later on. So I left it with him. And like a good old schoolboy, I sat by my phone on my vacation hoping that he would call, and he never did. So 5 days go by, I get back home up into Toronto, and sure enough, one day he calls. He goes, hey, big guy, how you doing? I said, hey, man, what's going on, champ? He says, hey, tomorrow, you got time for a coffee? I said, absolutely. Where you want to meet? He goes, why don't we go grab ourselves a Starbucks and we'll go for a walk down there on Ocean Drive, right there in Miami, right where we met. I said, absolutely. What time's good for you? He goes, how's 2 o'clock? Because I'll do my shoot around in the morning and I'll get on up there. I said, no problem. I banged out there, got to Starbucks. He's a Tazo Chai latte guy. We're walking up Ocean Drive. We're chatting about life in the future. And we chatted for a good 2 hours, just as 2 guys talking about what's going to happen after life after game. After that, he said, hey, so where are you off to now? I said, well, I got to go just jump on a plane and get back home. He goes, jump on a plane and get back home? What do you mean? You flew here? I said, yeah, man, I live in Toronto. He goes, I thought you lived in Miami. I said, no, man, I flew in here just for coffee with you. He goes, come on, man. Why don't you stay here the night, come to the game tonight, watch us beat Boston, and let me host you. I said, that'll be great. And man, it was magic. They won. I got to go for dinner with him and the team. I fell in love with just who NBA players were. And so that's what it took. And so from there, they lose against the Mavericks in that playoffs. And I became a confidant to him and a number of other players, which pulled me in closer and allowed me to be a part of their next back-to-back championships. And so to this day, not only can I call Juwan Howard my friend and my partner, but I can also call David Falk, his agent, my business partner and friend, which is really cool. So all of that because you take a chance. And that's kind of how I got into the NBA. And I got to work with the likes of, LeBron's camp, Mike Mancius, other people. I mean, Dwight Howard's a client of mine. He's at the 76ers right now. But what a brilliant run. I mean, I just love all those guys in the NBA.
Yeah, can you send a little good juju to the Sixers right now, man? Like, I'd need a championship. It's been a while. So
I know it could be a year. I mean, the East Conference looks good, but I mean, talk about. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Though, when you become a great coach, and I want to say this for the audience, especially for cleaning up and getting tight. The statement that both Justin and I are making, which is, there's a lot of coaches right now. Is you got to also recognize that you've got to put some flight hours into testing your systems and approaches. So whether I've worked with politicians or actors, musicians, business leaders, I also add to that repertoire, having worked with over 60 different professional players in the NBA, MLB, F1, I mean, Formula One racing, as well as football, and do mean soccer in Europe, where I've been able to work with some really great high performing people. And I've been able to compress all that experience. So I've got that pool of expertise to tap into. You got to put the time in. You got to put the time in.
Yeah, dude, I love all that. I'm so glad I backed around to that question. I love that story was phenomenal. And I love that instinct in that moment of like, I have to go back, and how often people get that little tap on the shoulder and they don't answer. Like, you have to turn around if you get that tap, because that could be the opportunity to completely change your life, to give you a view into something you had no idea was going to happen. Right. And so, we talked a little before we hit record about coaching and leadership and all of these important things, and how we lack leadership right now in this world, in this country, in your country, across the board, and in sports, everywhere. Right. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the lack of leadership and what some people can do to kind of start to turn that around, either for themselves or for larger organizations.
Well, look, man, I mean, I think this could be the rated R version of the podcast. I mean, it could be where we get real, rated R, get real. I mean, this could be the part where it can get controversial. This could be the part where I either lose someone or I win everyone. But I mean, I'm going to take a chance, because I'm going to stay real. So here's my assertion. This is my thesis. When you look at here, we both sit blessed, healthy, alive, well. It comes at the expense of over 500,000 deaths at this precise moment in the United States of America, that people have died of COVID-19, Corona, this pandemic. And let's not even get into the numbers in Canada, my friends in Europe, across Asia, and throughout other parts of the world. So you've got a pandemic, you've got a crisis. And I think the real crisis is a confidence crisis. So the confidence crisis has really emerged because of this one growing undertone to this pandemic, and that's uncertainty. And as we know in human beings' existence, when there's uncertainty, there's fear. And when there's fear, leadership is needed. And leadership is able to cut through the crap and be able to get concise and precise and execute a plan on how we can restore reality responsibly. Whether we're a basketball team and we're behind, or whether we're a nation and we've got to get it together, or whether we're a world and we need to get back to normal, whatever the case might be, leadership, in my view, failed mankind in 2020. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now. Not in this way, not in this format. And this is not about blue and red, Democratic or Republican. It's not Canada's fault or Asia's fault or Americans' fault. No, it's not about a fault. I think what we did as a coaching industry is we missed a huge opportunity to really make a difference, to really turn the tide. And it's because we've been serving an agenda that's ours. We haven't been taking on the task, which is the world's. So I think that coaching was really powerfully present in truly holding itself to account, to call leadership out, to let them know where they're screwing it up, to let them know what the opportunity is, to really reverse engineer the strategy and the opportunity to reconciling this crisis, so that they can really put the plan together. We wouldn't, to this day, still living in a state of uncertainty, the exact same thing we started with. So I believe that as a result of this coaching conundrum, right, this unsolvable challenge, it's given rise and continues to fuel, Justin, what I still say is the crisis of confidence.
So can your buddy Bill get you into the UN? Let's have this conversation.
but you're right? Because you got too many agendas being served. You got political agendas being served. You've got scientific communities agendas being served. I mean, there's things I've seen my government not do. I've seen your government not do certain things. So rather than making this a political or pandemic-based conversation, what I'm saying, and I think we're aligned on it, is where are you, coaches? Like, what do you really stand for? What do you feel called to do? And what problem can you not stand a minute more to have exist in this world that's going to keep you up and the fire in your belly strong to go out there and annihilate it so that you can save your community, your fellow friends? Hey, Justin, just amuse me for a minute. I want to share with you an analogy. Check this out. And I want everyone to close their eyes for a moment, unless you're driving, so keep your eyes open. But imagine this for a second. Imagine I just taught everything there was to know about fire prevention and safety, right? So now you get to go home to your bride, your family, your friends and say, hey, guys, we're fireproof. Now open your eyes. Now that you know your house is fireproof, here's the question. How fireproof are you really if your neighbors never came to the same seminar on fireproofing their home? So what would you be inclined to do? You go and teach them everything there is to know about fire prevention and safety. So you pack a 2-4, you get yourself some cookies baked, you get on over there and you teach them everything there is to know about fire prevention and safety so that they're fireproof. So the reality, the ideology, the approach really is not to fireproof your home, it's to fireproof your whole community so that the whole community is fireproof. That's coaching. It's not an opportunity, folks. It's not an opportunity. It's a responsibility. And the minute you realize that you're the standard that people live up to and through by your own personal demonstration, now you realize you've got a cape. You've got a calling. You've got a purpose. And that's your responsibility to now go and share that strength and pay it forward and go fireproof your community.
Dude, I love that. This conversation has been phenomenal. And I love the fact that you're teaching coaches through your programs. And we're going to get to how people can sign up for that here in a second. But I love that you're teaching coaches all over the world how to do that properly. Because like you said, there's a lot of people doing it wrong. But that analogy is the perfect setup of like, that's how it's done. It's as simple as that. It's a very basic, simple analogy, but it is as simple as that, which I love. Now, before I get to, go ahead.
But I want to just take some responsibility on something. I'm just interrupting you and I apologize because that's so un-Canadian. But
no, you're good.
Because we've been known as the three C's. We're cheap, we're conservative, and we're chicken. We don't do that. But I want to make sure this is clear. I wouldn't say that a lot of coaches do anything wrong. The only measurement a coach should be held up to account for is, are you effective? Are you impactful? And are you purposeful? Like if you're effective, if you're impactful, if you're purposeful, then you're doing your duty and you're fulfilling it well. But the person who should be moved the most by your coaching should be the client, should be them, not you. And that's what I'm saying is a lot of people, in fact, self-therapeutic, they self-correct through the act of coaching others. So although others don't get corrected, they don't get the result, you feel enlightened and alive. And that's not enough. That's not the game we should be playing. I just want to make sure I put that little correction in.
No, that's huge. I love that. So the cool part about this podcast is I get to have conversations with successful people, however you want to define success, right? Some of the most successful people in the world. But my question for you is, how do you define success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
I mean, look, if there's something that I recognize that, and that's a good question. I mean, to me, I believe success really comes down to really one word, which is freedom. You know, if you've got the freedom to do what you want, when you want, however you want, without compromise or cutting corners, my God, you've got the life of one's dream. I mean, that's success. That's success. So, because some people might say, hey, I got a garage full of cars, or I've got a fleet of planes, or I've got stuff. But really, when you look at it, I have a measurement of it. So I'm going to give you a little bit more. If I unpack it a little bit, I have this theory that what we want to do is always have a powerful relationship to 3 forms of measuring success: money, wealth, and worth. So when it comes to money, that's cash, that's currency, that's whatever you got in your pocket, whether it's Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, credit card, or true cash. So whatever you can afford to buy something. I've walked the streets with no cash in my pocket and I'm rich enough. And there's some people who've got a lot of cash in their pockets and they broke his ass. So just measuring money is enough. Now, money, wealth is to be wealthy as in the things you've got. So a nice house, nice stuff, nice things. Mm-hmm. Just because you have a lot of wealth doesn't mean you have a lot of money. I've met a lot of people with big houses and big debt. I've met a lot of people with really nice cars and no cash. But the worth piece, it's the value you give to and get from life. That worth piece is where you've got time, you've got the power of choice, and you've got the experience of freedom. And I mean, the older we get, the more of that we want, regardless of the wealth we have or the money we've accumulated. So if you're playing that financial game, I call that the sport of rich, right? That's the sport of rich, growing richer in the thing that matters most to you. And it's usually a stage and state thing, right, Justin? Yeah. So if I ask my son at 14, hey, what do you want, son? He goes, show me the money, right? So that's cool. That's 14. That's where he should be. But if I talk to some fellas who are in their 30s and 40s, they're like, hey, man, I got to get myself a new house. I got some kids on the way. I need a new ride. It's like, that's cool too. That's a good stage. That's a good state. But then you meet some people that are maybe wise enough in their 40s or they're well into their 50s or 60s. They look, it's all about life. It's all about joy. It's all about bliss and recreating yourself, your life, and your future. So let's just focus on this because that's all that matters. And that's cool too. And my hope for the whole audience that you've got, that you're so blessed to have and that trust you and love you, Justin, is that they realize that you can play that game far earlier and get the rest of it too. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be in pragmatic order. You don't have to get rich and have stuff to gain worth. You can gain worth by pursuing those things, and you'll get a lot more joy out of it.
I love that answer, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really enjoyed that. So let's get to the important stuff. So just so you know, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they work with you? I know you've got a great program you're throwing out there so you can reach your massive impact goals. Talk a little bit about that and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, you know what, man? It's we run a very cool ecosystem where we run a large number of shows. The Sport of Rich, which is a free show that happens on Wednesdays at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time every single week, and it's a live conversation where it's free. I mean, there's no hitch, there's no sales pitch per se. It's a great way for people to come out and get a sense of me and/or test drive what I've got. We also have a subscription model where for $99 a month, you get access to a series of other calls we do, some great live shows where we coach the coach on Thursdays. We have this thing called Courageous Conversations where I interview, for example, this Friday, I'll be interviewing Tony Hawk, dear friend, skateboard legends, cool. Yeah. Steve Aoki's on the deck. Mike Tyson's going to be doing a second interview with me. We've interviewed, I gave Larry King his last interview. God bless him before he passed. So I have some of my celebrity friends who will come into this thing called Courageous Conversation, and you get access to 150 other Courageous Conversations in the vault. So you can come in for free, you can subscribe and cancel anytime, no contract. And then you can start getting yourself into the planning modules. We have life plans, financial plans, money plans, business plans that you can buy and use. And it goes into our certification programs, accreditation, and then of course our Rolls Royce, which is really Rich Mastery. And it's a by invitation only. It's a 1-year program, results guaranteed. And that's the kind of program I'll put any celebrity, athlete, actor, or CEO through, that we have people that go through. So they can go to richarddolan.com, Richard Dolan, D as in Delta, OLAN.com, and they can explore all that kind of stuff.
Awesome, man. Love it. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this last question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, the question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
That's a good question. I have to say right now. I mean, if for me, my answer to that question is that if you've had the experience that growth occurred back there somewhere, then man, get off that, because you should be growing right now. And then tomorrow, right now. And then when I ask you next Tuesday, right now. Every day should be your biggest growth day, because if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not getting it, you're dying on it. And I mean, for me and for all, you've got to realize that now is all you've got. And now is all you'll ever have. Tomorrow, you don't know what's going to happen. And if we left ourselves to our own devices and not get stretched by conversations like this one, and not be pulled because of who Jason is and what he's up to, or Justin or Jeff or Bill, whoever you listen to, all these conversations remind you that if you're not stretching, you're shrinking. And if you're shrinking, you're dying. So I think my biggest growth, and I do admit right now, as I reflect, I mean, right now I'm the biggest I've ever been, intellectually, emotionally, faithfully, intellectually stimulated, and financially focused. And I'm sure it'll be the same tomorrow.
Awesome. I love it. Richard, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like I could have talked to you for another 3 hours, so we'll have to have you back on the show in the future.
Love that,
but this has been phenomenal. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Justin. I mean, just a real strong accolade real quick is that for everyone listening to this conversation, you got to just step back and realize like what a blessing this is, to be able to have someone that's taking it upon themselves to connect people like me to people like you. So Justin, on behalf of your listenership, man, thank you so much for me and on behalf of them.
Yeah, thank you.